Here we go. Oh, that's some good torque. Come on, Daddy Triton, come on. I believe in you. Oh, wow. I did not expect that. Hey guys, check this out. We are here with the new Mitsubishi Triton. Finally, this thing has bloody launched in Australia. We did the prototype review last year. You might remember I took this thing sand duning, essentially. But now I've actually got to spend quite a lot of time with the new Mitsubishi Triton, driving it on road, seeing how different it is. Because as you can see, it's not just the beast mode looks daddy, it's the bloody way it drives. It's the new engine. Got quite a lot going for it. And honestly, it can really give the Ford Ranger and the Toyota HiLux a run for their money, though it does have a few things that I don't particularly love. So today I'm going to take you for a full review of the all-new Mitsubishi Triton. So damn exciting. We're going to check out the exterior, check out the interior, talk about its practicality, because honestly, it is class leading now for that. We're then going to performance test this thing using our specialist timing gear, see just how quick it is with its new engine, or at least that's what Mitsubishi say. And of course, we're going to off-road this thing, see how it performs, because technically it's actually taken a step back mechanically. And then we're going to end on our final thoughts. Should you buy the new Mitsubishi Triton? Because there's some things that you need to know. So let's get into it. Alrighty guys, so we are here with the flagship GSR. It'll set you back 63,840 Australian dollars before on-road costs, which is actually really good when you consider that a Ford Ranger Wildtrak with the 4-cylinder and part-time four-wheel drive, well, that will set you back $6,000 more. And if you want to go for the permanent four-wheel drive with the V6, to be fair, in the Wildtrak, that'll set you back almost $11,000 more. So yeah, big price differential between this and the class leader, the Ford Ranger. And you can get into one of these for $50,000, although that will give you part-time four-wheel drive, but we'll come back to that when we're off-roading. Let's talk about how much bigger this thing is, because in my eyes, this isn't just an evolution of the previous generation Triton. It's really a completely different car, and some people are going to really hate that, because actually on paper, it's not quite as good for off-roading, for example. So in terms of dimensions, it is 15 millimeters longer. It's 50 millimeters wider. The wheelbase is 130 millimeters longer. The tray length is 35 millimeters longer. Hell, inside, it's 49 millimeters wider for shoulder room. So overall, this package is so much bigger than before. And now it matches the Ford Ranger, the Toyota HiLux, and that's what Mitsubishi were going for. But as you'll see, that does impact some of the departure angles, approach angles. It's also wider, so technically less good for going off-road. But actually, let's just talk about this beast mode design, because I think it's pretty damn cool. Everything's going Americano. So first of all, it looks really menacing. It's super duper wide. You have these cool daytime running lights here, split headlight design with some pretty bright LEDs, LED fog lights there as well. You get a massive grille here. It does look super aggressive. I love how Mitsubishi is embossed into the front as well, and how it's color matched, right? Like it's orange. I don't know, very cool. You've got your Mitsubishi badge there. You've also got a radar. So this thing has radar cruise control. It will cut off under 25 kilometers an hour, but hey, at least it's got it, I suppose. It's also got a camera up there, and that allows it to have things like lane departure warning, but as you'll see, it's actually quite a frustrating system because it breaks the wheels, which is really not that great, as you'll see. And if you want to read more about the pricing and the individual specs, head to our website, CarSauce.com. Got a full written review of this thing up there now. Yeah, pretty cool. Let's check out the side. Alrighty, so let's talk about the side. And I want to focus in for a moment on the suspension specifically. So first of all, this thing has 18-inch wheels. You got Maxxis all-terrain tires, actually pretty good tires here on the GSR. But the suspension is what is actually quite impressive, because they tested over 100 combinations of the suspension. And Australia actually has a incredibly unique suspension setup for the Triton. In fact, they call it Australia and everywhere else. So the double wishbone suspension up front is actually larger. And I will say, at higher speeds, this thing performs really well, but at lower speeds, well, I'll tell you about that in a second. But anyway, pretty damn cool that it has an Aussie suspension tune and also an Aussie handling tune, because it's got a new electronic steering rack. Again, we'll come back to that. Got a 360 camera there with blacked out mirror caps. Got some pretty cool side steps, which they said they took a long time to develop to be able to let water run off. You have keyless entry and go. You've also got very tinted privacy glass here. Also feels like a marathon walking towards the back now, just because it is 130 millimeters longer. Very impressive. And better yet, they've actually brought the tub forward by 35 millimeters. So it's bigger than before, but as you'll see, the wheels aren't just here like they were in the previous Triton. Had quite a nasty nasty habit of if you loaded too much weight in the back, it would tip backwards. But this doesn't really have that issue because, well, they've thought about it, and really, they know that that was a big issue. You do have a big sailplane here as well as part of the GSR. Don't know if I love them, but hey, it's sporty, I suppose. And the other thing for the suspension here, you can get it with two types. You got the heavy duty suspension and the standard duty. If you go for the GLS or the GSR, the two top specs, you will get the standard duty suspension. Everything below gets the heavy duty suspension, and they've actually reduced the amount of leaves by 1 for both. And so even though you get 3 leaves of suspension, this thing actually has an almost 1.1 ton payload. It's really impressive. In fact, some grades have more than that. And that makes this pretty much class leading in terms of its payload capacity. Let's talk about the bum. All right, let's talk about the bum now. I do love these taillights here. They've got a cool 3D effect to them as well. You get bloody halogen bulbs, which is just annoying. All right, this car is not cheap. Huge, I should say. So, you know, they could do better with that. You have your Mitsubishi badge there, GSR badge with a bit of weird carbon fiber, Triton badge as well. You've also got your manly side steps. And yes, this thing has a 3.5 ton braked towing. So finally, it's a lot better. It used to be 3.1 tons, which was really class trailing. And better yet, because this thing has such a massive payload capacity, you can actually get like 600 kilograms of extra payload, even if you are towing a 3.5 ton vehicle. Very, very impressive. Let's also talk about this. So, in terms of boot space, come on, Mitsubishi, put in a torsion bar there. It's pretty heavy tailgate. You do get class-leading amounts of room as well. Again, super duper impressive. I put all the specs up on the screen, but now you can fit a Euro pallet. It's a lot longer, it's a lot better, it's a lot more usable. And really that was one of the major complaints of before, is that it really just was, you know, compromised in a lot of ways. But now in terms of its real capacity, its workhorseness, it's a lot better. Let's check out the interior. Alrighty guys, so let's talk about the interior now of the 6th generation Triton. And honestly, this could be named something completely different because it is worlds better than before. I mean, look at the design. It is modern, it looks great, it's extremely functional as well. You got split glove boxes, love that. You have hidden cup holders here as well on both sides. You've got a wireless phone charger in a bloody Triton. That hasn't been seen before. You've got a couple of cup holders here as well. Wonderful. It's not necessarily got the best materials, it's scratchy everywhere, but you've also got some soft touch. At least here in the GSR, you get quite a lot. And actually across the entire range, you get great inclusions like powered lumbar. And by the way, that lumbar support is really strong. Let's talk about these seats. So they are a beautiful leather seat, very, very supportive. We've done a couple of really long drives in this and it's been very comfortable. In fact, I would say class-leadingly comfortable, like that good. I do love the orange stitching absolutely everywhere. It does look very cool, including this steering wheel, which feels so much better than before. The previous Triton just had this really old steering wheel. This is much nicer. Orange stitching around it here on the GSR, but it's just so nice to hold on to a beautiful leather unit with buttons to control everything. The technology in here is fantastic. So USB-C port, USB-A port. By the way, they've actually increased the amperage. So the USB-C port is now 3 amps. The USB-A port is 2.5 amps. That's up from 1.5 amps in the previous gen Triton. So small attention to detail things that are really good. Your air conditioning controls, they're these really nice buttons. And by the way, this thing has some really powerful air conditioning. You might be able to hear that. It's got a nice little fan curve to it. By the way, here in the GSR, the seats are heated. There is no cooled seats though, which is a shame. And also there's just blank buttons here, which is never nice to see on a top spec. Though actually we have been speaking to the team here and there does seem to be quite a bit of interest in a potential rally art model. So stay tuned to the channel. Make sure you subscribe because if there is one, you know we'll be there. Technology has also improved for the infotainment display. I'm not gonna say it's the best, to be honest. It's 9 inches. It's really not, oh, shut up, bitch. It's really not, oh, just, okay. You know what? You know, that's drained my thought. This thing now gets a driver monitoring system. Oh, it is seriously one of the most annoying things ever. It's now required if you want to get a 5-star ANCAP safety rating. I don't think they even love it. There's nothing worse than that sound that goes over and over again. And I've got to be honest, here in the Triton, it's pretty poorly calibrated. If you look at the digital instrument cluster, it'll go off at you. You look in your mirror, it'll go off at you. You look at anywhere other than dead straight in front of you, it goes off. Does my head in. Anyway, so back to this 9-inch infotainment. Just shut up. Oh, you're ruining my shots. I'm gonna use my left arm here. You use the 9-inch infotainment display. It does have wireless Apple CarPlay, but wired Android Auto. And I've just noticed it's quite laggy. So yeah, that's a bit of a shame, especially for a brand new car. I feel like the processing power behind that could get a bit better. Oh, you bitch. Up in front of you, you get a digital instrument cluster, and actually it shows plenty of information. It's not the biggest screen out there, but it's extremely functional, so I like it a lot. But you also retain your analog gauges, which I know a lot of you do love, and I love seeing it as well. So yeah, no complaints. I think they've done a great job with that too. And of course, purists rejoice. You get your manual handbrake here too. You get a nice soft center armrest with actually quite a lot of storage within there. The door bins are a pretty massive size. And so yeah, overall, I am very impressed with the interior of the new Triton. It is such a major step up versus before. And by the way, we can now help you buy your next car. We've teamed up with Motorscout, which is Australia's best car buying service. We have literally thousands of dealerships who actually all bid against each other to see who can get you the lowest price for your next car without any hassle or obligation. And with thousands of 5-star reviews, you can be sure you are in safe hands. So if you want to buy one of these or any other new car, head to carsauce.com/buy and let us help you get the absolute best deal for your next car. All right, let's check out the back seats. Okay, so back seats of the Triton now. What's it like back here? Honestly, it is class leading. It is amazing how much space you get back here. So I'm 5'11". I've got heaps of legroom, heaps of headroom. Toe room is also pretty damn good as well. And this is my normal seating position, and I sit weirdly far back. So if you're regularly carrying people in the second row, you definitely should not look past the Triton. Now, some people, including myself, have actually been kind of skeptical of this up here. This is your air conditioning, essentially. It's actually an air recirculator. So you have controls up here and you can control the speed. And now at first I'm like, well, that just recirculates air. Who wants that? You want the cool air from down here, daddy. Well, actually, no, you don't want that because it just cools your legs. This here, not only does it blow air into your face or anywhere you really want, you can really change the direction of the air. Mitsubishi showed us that even with an ambient outside temperature of 40 degrees, if you put this on full and that's on low, it only takes 3 minutes to get the entire cabin down to about 19 degrees, which is phenomenal performance. So these actually perform better than you might expect. Definitely better than just having air vents here. That's cool engineering. You've also got a USB-C port, USB-A port, a 12-volt socky-wocky there too. You've got pretty massive map pockets here. You've also got a couple of phone pockets up at the top. That's pretty cool. Quality definitely takes a hit in the back, but you see that across every ute in this class. Again, you get the same nice leather as up front with a little pull down armrest with a couple of cup holders, nice soft leather there too. And actually I sat in the back of this thing for a couple of hours with the interior stacked with bags and I still had plenty of space and I was really comfortable. So yeah, it's a nice place to be, weirdly, in the back of the Triton. You could not say that about the previous Triton. This definitely feels like an all new car in the interior. I'm very impressed. Apart from that stupid eye monitoring system, hate it. One thing I should mention though is that although you can pull this forward and get a bit of space behind, these rear seats are actually clamped down and you can't actually get underneath it. So no underfloor storage, which is a shame. All right, mummies and daddies, it's time for the real moment of truth. How does this thing perform in a straight line? Is it fast? Let's test out the 0 to 100. Alrighty, mummies and daddies, it's time. We are finally going to launch the new Triton. Is it faster than before? It's bigger, it's heavier. It's also a lot more powerful with way more torque. We have our specialist timing gear here. Last time we got 10.4 seconds in the previous Triton. What will we do now? Brake boosting it? Fist me. Here we go. Oh, that's some good torque. Come on, Daddy Triton, come on! I believe in you! I believe in you! Oh! Wow, I did not expect that. 0 to 100 in 10.5 seconds. So slightly slower than before. I guess the added weight makes up for the extra power and torque. But that's really not the whole story. Let's take this thing for a drive and I'm gonna tell you everything I really think. Alrighty, daddies, the moment we have all been waiting for. How does the new 6th gen Triton drive? Well, there's some good, there's some bad. So let's give this thing some sauce. Ooh, Okay, so let's talk about this. It really has an all-new engine, at least according to Mitsubishi. You see, it's got the same literage, 2.4 litre turbocharged diesel, except now we have a twin turbocharged diesel with a bit of whistling.
I'm not sure from where. But it puts out more power and more torque. So we have 150 kilowatt of power, 470 newton meters of torque. Is that class leading? No, but it's about class average, which the previous Triton, it wasn't. We also have something new called yaw control, apparently first seen in the Mitsubishi Evos. It actually has its own module. It's called a yaw module, and it brakes the front wheels to make sure that this thing has enough grip at all times. And it's mostly pretty good, although when you combine it with the ELSD in the back that uses braking, well, sometimes I don't know if they don't talk to each other or something's not quite right, and you start to get a bit of kicking out. It's different. Okay, it's different. But I guess you do have to remember this is a dual cab ute. There is no weight in the back at the moment. And of course, we have leaf springs. Speaking of, because we are in the GSR, we have 3 leaf springs. If you go for the 2 entry grades, you'll get 4 because that has heavy duty suspension. This actually deletes it, but it's better for comfort. And this is where we come to comfort, because a bit of a mixed bag, I'm not gonna lie. When you're sitting at highway speeds, it's pretty good. It's extremely windy at the moment, actually, and it's really quiet in here, and that's one of the things they have done very well. It's quiet. One of the most quiet utes I've ever been in, honestly. Oh, don't fall. Oh, don't fall. Oh, we'll come back to that one soon, daddies, don't you worry. But yes, when you're at highway speeds, the dampers seem to do a good job of making this pretty comfortable. In fact, it's quite compliant, and it almost gets quite wafty, which is not a bad thing, especially when you're touring. It's quite nice. Where this becomes a bit of an issue, I'm not gonna lie, is when we get to, let's say, less than 50 kilometers an hour or so. That's when you really start to feel a lot of the bumps in the road. In fact, I would almost go so far as to say it's kind of uncomfortable. It doesn't feel settled, it's kind of just jittering around, and I don't remember that happening in the previous MR Triton. So I don't know if that's a tuning thing, if it's a damper thing, but yeah, I'm really feeling a lot of the road bumps. But then you accelerate, pretty punchy engine, there to 80, and actually it becomes a lot better. Another big thing is they have changed from hydraulic steering. Now you have electronic steering. 3.3 turns. Get a full lock apparently. And actually it's pretty good. Definitely on the lighter side. I'm not gonna say it's the best feeling steering rack out there, but it does a pretty good job. Of course, we cannot forget that if you go for the 2 higher specs like the GSI here, we have a permanent 4-wheel drive, baby. Super Select 2 4-wheel drive. It's really awesome because it means you get to use permanent 4-wheel drive on the road because it has a pretty trick center diff. You can't get that in a lot of competitors. The Ford Ranger has it, but you'll be paying a pretty penny for it. So apart from the Great Wall Cannon, you can watch my review, I've linked that down below. This is one of the cheapest utes that comes with a permanent 4-wheel drive system. Very, very good. So where are my complaints, daddies? That's what you're asking. You're thinking, Matt, what's wrong with this car? Well, apart from some of the things I've already mentioned, this is one of them. It's come to a stop. It's the stop start. It's rough, it shakes the car, and it's rough when it turns on the car. It is definitely one of the more unrefined start-stop systems I've used, and it was so noticeable in bumper-to-bumper traffic earlier. It was not great. You can turn it off with the press of a button down here, so that's a good thing, but still kind of annoying. More things as well, it doesn't have any sort of like lane centering. I mean, they say it does, but it's not. What happens is you hit the lane, it vibrates and it will break the wheel. But I've actually found that to be quite intrusive and borderline dangerous because it slows down the car. I've never liked that system and I'm amazed they put it in here. And I have not been able to fully turn it off. Maybe there's a way, but I've gone into the settings, I've held down buttons and it's not fully turning off. So yeah, not great. And I'm usually a really big advocate for these systems, so not good. You can see the secondary ride here, it definitely gets a bit bumpier, a bit jittery. But then we come back to the benefits, right? And that is that it now gets 3.5 ton brake towing and pretty much class leading payload. Really good. In fact, if you're towing 3.5 tons, you could still get like over 600 kilograms of payload in the back of one of these. Very, very impressive. And coming back to that engine power, you put your foot down and it just feels a lot more effortless. The issue with the previous MR Triton was that its peak torque was pretty much at 2,500 RPM, whereas this has a big range of RPM peak torque. It's 1,500 to 2,750, and so that means you're essentially almost always in peak torque range, and it feels so much better for it. It really does feel like an entirely different engine. I think it's pretty fair to say that I think the Ranger is the class leader at the moment. It's definitely the benchmark. It's reflected in its sales, right? It's #1 in Australia for 2023, and although it has more power, it handles better, it rides rides better. There are actually quite a lot of things I love about the new Triton. I love that it's up to scratch now. It doesn't feel old. In fact, it feels competitive with those other cars. And when you consider that this thing is significantly cheaper than a Ford Ranger or a Toyota Hilux, at least the equivalent spec, well, it's not hard to see that this thing is going to be very popular. I truly believe it. And again, if you want to buy one of these, you can do so through us, carsauce.com/buy, and we will get you not only the best deal, but without the hassle. That's pretty important. Not to mention, because we've partnered with the leading car buying service in Australia, well, they have thousands of 5-star reviews. So again, carsauce.com/buy. Alrighty, mummies and daddies, let's take the Triton off-road. Oh, so many beeps and bongs, my God. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put the car into its 4-high locked center diff mode. As you can see up on the screen, we are now in that. We also now get access to our drive mode. So you get normal and eco when you're in 2-wheel drive. When you're in 4-high, like I am now, we get normal, mud, and sand, which was a pretty big thing for them, and I'll tell you why in a second. And then if we come to a stop, put the car in neutral, put the car into low range, lights up like a Christmas tree. Now you can see we get normal and rock, which is what we'll be doing in a moment. But let's go back now to high range. So I'm gonna be honest with you guys and say, physically speaking, this Triton is actually not better than the last generation. And that's just because it's bigger in every way. So the approach angle is 30.4 degrees, which is down 0.6 of a degree. Oh my God, I'm interrupting a kangaroo lovemaking session. Welcome to Australia, daddies. It is Valentine's Day today, so hey, you do you, kangaroo. The ramp over brake angle is 22.8 degrees, which is minus 0.02 of a degree worse. And the departure angle is also 22.8 degrees, which is also 0.2 of a degree worse. Now, we have done some pretty serious off-roading in the Triton, and really, that's not where the Triton's improvements have come from. The first big one is that this thing, as I get bounced around, this thing is now just way better in terms of its power delivery. No longer do you have immense turbo lag, which could often just spin up the wheels when it actually hit its peak torque output. Now you have a much wider band, and that really does allow for much easier ability to climb up a hill, for example, while also allowing you to be a lot more consistent as well. The other thing, and really the biggest thing about it, is all the software that has gone into it. It's kind of like the Land Cruiser 300 series. That thing is so good just because of the amount of effort that has gone into the software, and this is really quite similar. They actually flew out their team to Australia over many years to get this right. But you really do notice a lot of these software additions. For example, when I took this on sand back in the prototype drive, I really noticed the sand mode kicking in and making sure that I didn't just break traction all the time. Even though this thing on paper, you know, it's really not quite as good as its competitors in most ways, it can actually keep up surprisingly well. And in some instances, like sand, I would definitely say it's at the leading edge. So of course this thing does have hill descent control. Let's test that out. Put the car in neutral, put the low range transfer case on, back to drive, press the button, boom. All right, we let go, and you'll be able to hear traction keeping us at a really slow and steady pace. The worst thing is when you start bombing it down a hill, even though hill descent control is on. Yeah, the traction control system is doing a very, very good job at just keeping us steady, even though I'm bouncing around quite a lot. And we have a few jagged rocks in front of us, so let's put the car now into its rock mode. And I'll take it slowly up here so you can see what I mean. The way that it's tuned, it's keeping power, even though my foot is not moving off the accelerator, it's modulating that power to be able to get us over the rocks while not breaking the wheels. It's a really, really impressive system, to be honest. And again, I don't think it's groundbreaking. I can't say I think it's doing much better at all than like a Ford Ranger, but I will say for the average Joe Blow on some pretty technical off-road courses that we've done here, it's actually been quite surprisingly good. And a big thing to mention as well with this is the 6-speed Aisin torque converter transmission. It is pretty much a complete carryover from the last gen, but to be honest, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's a really good transmission. We see it in quite a few cars. They're mega reliable, and it works totally fine here. Not to mention fuel economy. I wanted to test that out last time and I couldn't because I couldn't drive it on roads. But on highway, I have seen fuel economy in the low 7s, like 7.2 liters per 100 kilometers. That's impressive. I will say, this is annoying. Why is driver monitoring happening in low range when everything is off? That should not happen, Mitsubishi. Please fix that. Every time you cross your arms over, well, all of a sudden it's beeping and bonging. Not cool, man, not cool. Okay, so this part up in front of us is actually quite gnarly because it's very dry and that's very dusty while being very rocky at the same time. So put the car back into neutral, put it into low range, back to drive, and we're going to activate that rock mode again. And you'll see what I mean here. This is quite a steep incline, while also being really quite challenging for a lot of utes. Okay, come on. It's hard to keep your foot flat on the throttle, but that is really impressive. This is quite a lot. Oh, that's very impressive. I also like that we're not bottoming out there, which I have been quite worried about because 222 millimeters of ground clearance is pretty good, but certainly not earth-shattering. And there you go. Even though I'm bouncing around a lot, the Triton felt very assured during that time. So yeah, the package, it comes together really well. Technically, on paper, it's not quite as good as the previous generation Triton, but actually, it is. Better. Although a caveat to that is I have noticed the width being a bit more annoying just because of the 50 mil difference. Well, you do kind of notice that you're closer to the edges of the track. So maybe the previous generation Triton was better. But I'm curious to know what you guys think about the off-roading. Do you reckon software can overtake like physical attributes of a car? I reckon in a lot of cases it can. Do you reckon it does here though? Alrighty, let's get into our final thoughts.
Alrighty guys, final thoughts on the new Mitsubishi Triton. Should you buy one? And does it dethrone the Ford Ranger and the Toyota HiLux? Well, honestly, no, I don't think it's quite as good as the Ford Ranger anyway. Toyota HiLux is a different story. This thing does get a lot right, and I do love the new engine. I definitely think it matches what's currently on offer elsewhere. It's got class-leading payload, really, really good. It's just so much better in pretty much every way that it's unrecognizable from the previous MR Triton, which of course we have reviewed, and if you want to go check that out, we'll link that down below. The big thing that this has going for it is that it's significantly cheaper than its competitors, being $6 cheaper than a Ford Ranger Wildtrak, and considering that this thing gets permanent full drive, then it's like $11 cheaper than the equivalent Ford Ranger Wildtrak. You know, that's a really, really good deal. And of course, if you want to buy one of these or any other utes, you can head to carsauce.com/buy. We'll get you the best price with no hassle. You don't have to deal with the bullshit. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think of the Mitsubishi Triton. I think it's a pretty damn good ute. And as always, ciao for now.